What if I told you that some of Britain's brightest minds, educated at one of the most prestigious universities in the world, secretly betrayed their country at the height of the Cold War? The story of the Cambridge Five isn't just about espionage. It's about idealism, betrayal, politics, and the devastating impact of secrets whispered behind closed doors. These were not hardened criminals or shadowy figures lurking in alleys. They were scholars, diplomats, journalists, and even members of Britain's elite establishment. Yet for decades, they passed some of the West's most sensitive secrets directly into the hands of Soviet intelligence. The Cambridge Five, Kim Philby, Guy Burgess, Donald Maclean, Anthony Blunt, and John Cairncross, formed one of the most effective spy rings in modern history. Recruited in the 1930s, they would rise through the ranks of government and intelligence circles, feeding Moscow everything from nuclear strategies to wartime plans. Their betrayal shocked Britain, embarrassed the United States, and forced Western intelligence to question just how deeply the Soviets had infiltrated their ranks. But who were these men really? What drove them to turn against their own country? And how did they manage to stay hidden for so long in the very heart of the British establishment? In this video, we'll unravel the gripping tale of the Cambridge Five, their recruitment and early motivations, their rise to power in British intelligence, the devastating consequences of their betrayal, and the long-lasting legacy of distrust they left behind. This isn't just a story about espionage. It's a story about human weakness, political conviction, and how loyalty can be twisted in times of global crisis. So settle in, because this is the story of Britain's most infamous traitors, the Cambridge Five. Part 1. The World They Inherited, 1930s Cambridge. Set the stage, 1930s. Cambridge University was a hub of intellectual debate, progressive thought, and political activism. The world was in turmoil. The Great Depression, the rise of fascism in Germany and Italy, and disillusionment with capitalism. Many students gravitated toward leftist ideologies. The Soviet Union, despite its brutality, was viewed by some as a genuine alternative to fascism and inequality. Fun fact: Cambridge and Oxford at the time were incubators not just for future prime ministers, but also spies, because Britain's elite all funneled through the same academic and social circles. Myth-busting insight. Contrary to Hollywood depictions, spies were rarely recruited in smoky bars. The KGB actually targeted idealistic young men with intelligence potential before they even began their careers. Introduce Kim Philby, son of a famous adventurer and Arabist, charming and brilliant. Introduce Guy Burgess, flamboyant, witty, but also reckless. Introduce Donald Maclean, idealistic, deeply committed to Marxism. Introduce Anthony Blunt, art historian, sophisticated, with access to the royal family. Introduce John Cairncross, quieter, more academic, yet equally effective. Together they would form the Cambridge Five, though at the time, they were simply ambitious students, convinced they could change the world. Part 2. Recruitment by the Soviets. Soviet intelligence recognized opportunity. Britain's elite pipeline meant that students at Cambridge could end up running the Foreign Office, MI6, or even advising the king. The NKVD, predecessor to the KGB, began recruiting carefully. Each member had their own motives, some ideological, some personal. Myth-busting. They weren't recruited as spies in the traditional sense. They were told they were fighting fascism and helping world peace. The Soviets played the long game, planting seeds in the 1930s, then waiting as these men entered government service in the 1940s. Part 3. War and Opportunity. World War II. World War II was the perfect cover. Britain desperately needed young, capable men for intelligence and diplomacy. Kim Philby joined MI6. Burgess entered the BBC and later the Foreign Office. Maclean was placed in the Foreign Office. Blunt was recruited into MI5. Cairncross ended up in Bletchley Park, working on code breaking. Fun fact: Cairncross may have given the Soviets early information about the Enigma code-breaking efforts. Their access was extraordinary. Plans for D-Day, Allied negotiations, even nuclear secrets via Maclean's postings in Washington. Myth-busting. It wasn't just one man passing documents. The Cambridge Five operated independently at times, but their combined leaks represented one of the greatest intelligence losses in Western history. Part 4. The Cold War heats up. After World War II, the West and USSR transitioned from uneasy allies to bitter rivals. The Cambridge Five were perfectly placed to feed Moscow. Philby rose to become head of Soviet counterintelligence in M16, ironically, tasked with rooting out the very spies he worked for. Burgess and Maclean passed nuclear and diplomatic secrets. Blunt provided insight from MI5. Cairncross, though less celebrated, gave key information from the Treasury and intelligence circles. Impact. The Soviets often knew Western strategy before NATO allies did. Some historians argue this emboldened Soviet policies in Berlin and Korea. Part 5. Suspicion and exposure. Cracks appeared in the early 1950s. The defection of Soviet agents and growing paranoia in MI5 put the spotlight on possible moles. Maclean came under suspicion due to decrypted Soviet cables, Venona Project. In 1951, Burgess and Maclean dramatically defected to Moscow. Their disappearance shocked Britain and the US, sparking one of the biggest security scandals of the century. Philby fell under suspicion but managed to deflect blame for years, protected by his charm, connections, and establishment allies. Myth-busting. The British establishment was reluctant to believe one of their own could be a traitor. Class privilege often shielded the Cambridge spies longer than it should have. Part 6. Final unmasking. Eventually, in the 1960s, evidence mounted. Kim Philby defected in 1963 after being exposed. Anthony Blunt was revealed in 1979, though his treachery had been quietly known for years. John Cairncross was also unmasked, though with less fanfare. By the end, all five had been exposed, but only Burgess and Maclean lived openly in Moscow. Philby, too, became a Soviet citizen. Blunt kept his royal connections until publicly disgraced. Part 7. Legacy of the Cambridge Five. They damaged Anglo-American trust. The CIA doubted MI6 for decades. Their actions gave the Soviets enormous advantages during critical moments of the Cold War. Fun fact: Philby became a celebrity in Moscow, appearing on Soviet TV as a symbol of Western betrayal. Their story shaped how modern counterintelligence operates: deeper vetting, less reliance on class privilege, and more suspicion even of insiders. The Cambridge Five remain one of the most infamous spy rings in history. They weren't outsiders. They were insiders, drawn from Britain's most elite institutions. Their betrayal wasn't fueled by money, but by ideology, conviction, and, in some cases, reckless arrogance. They remind us of a chilling truth: the greatest dangers to a nation's security often come not from outside, but from within. So the next time you hear about the Cold War, think beyond nuclear standoffs and political speeches. Remember the quiet betrayals of Cambridge's cloistered halls, where five men decided to gamble their country's secrets for a vision of a different world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most dramatic tales of espionage, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more hidden chapters of history to life, because history isn't just about kings and battles. It's about secrets, betrayals, and the people who thought they could change the world, for better or worse.